AITA for making my dad regret sleeping with my fiancée before my wedding? I'm a 32-year-old man, and up until 6 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I busted my hump working construction for years until I finally started my own contracting business, which was finally bringing in good money. I'm not one to brag, but I'm 6 feet 2 inches, hit the gym 5 days a week, and drive a Ford F-150 that I paid off early. Everything I have, I earned. Nobody handed me anything. Look, I wasn't always this driven. In high school, I was that guy who didn't know what he wanted to do. My grades were decent, but college didn't seem like my thing. My dad, Robert, 56, was always on my case about it. You need a degree to be somebody in this world, he used to say, even though he never went to college himself. He joined the Army right out of high school, served 20 years, and then landed a cushy VP position at an insurance company thanks to his military connections. A classic do as I say, not as I do situation. When I chose trade school over a 4-year degree, it was like I told him I was going to be a professional clown. Manual labor is for people who don't use their brains, he'd say at family dinners, like I wasn't even there. Meanwhile, I was learning actual skills while his office buddies were paying guys like me thousands to fix up their fancy houses. My mom, Sarah, 53, was always the mediator. She worked as a nurse for 25 years pulling night shifts and dealing with ungrateful patients, but still somehow found the energy to smooth things over when my dad and I butted heads. She's the real MVP. She always told me, your father just wants what's best for you, even when he was being a complete jerk. A classic enabler, I guess, but she meant well. By 28, I had my own crew and was making more than most of my friends with college degrees and student loan debt. That's when I met Amber at my buddy Mark's barbecue. Let me tell you about Amber, 28. Picture the girl every guy wants to talk to the second she walks into a room. Long blonde hair, athletic body from all those boutique fitness classes she took, and a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. She worked as a marketing manager at a tech startup and always peppered conversations with phrases like smash the patriarchy and break the glass ceiling. At first, I thought it was cool how passionate she was about women's rights and all that. We hit it off right away, even though on paper we were complete opposites. She had a master's degree in communications and came from an upper-middle-class family where everyone was a professional something or other. I kept waiting for her to realize I wasn't on her level, but she seemed genuinely interested in me. I love how you work with your hands, she'd say. All the guys I know are these soft tech brothers who wouldn't know how to change a tire if their lives depended on it. It stroked my ego, I won't lie. We moved in together after 8 months, and I proposed on our 2nd anniversary. Nothing fancy, just took her hiking to this scenic overlook I knew. Got down on one knee at sunset. The ring was my grandmother's, a vintage Art Deco piece my mom had been saving for when I found the one. Amber cried and said it was perfect. When I told my parents we were engaged, Mom was ecstatic. Surprisingly, my dad seemed impressed. She's going places, he told me privately. Good move, son. Maybe it was the first genuine compliment he'd given me in years. I should have known then that something was off. We spent the next year planning the wedding. Amber got completely wrapped up in the details. A rustic barn venue, custom invitations, farm-to-table catering, the whole 9 yards. Every time I saw the budget spiraling out of control, she'd say, "This is our special day, Jake. Don't you want it to be perfect?" And, like an idiot, I'd nod. Meanwhile, I was thinking long-term. I put a down payment on a house in a good school district, opened a separate savings account for future kid expenses, even started researching how to expand my business to include more commercial contracts and ensure stability. I wanted to build something solid for us. Amber was saying all the right things, too. Talking about the kids we'd have, the names we'd give them, how we'd raise them to be strong, independent people. Sometimes she'd go off on tangents about gender-neutral parenting or how she'd never let a daughter of hers play with Barbies. But I figured it was just her being progressive or whatever. Life was good. Business was booming. I had more work than I could handle. Our house was almost ready for us to move in after the wedding. The big day was set for July 15th, just 6 weeks away. Everything was coming up aces. And then came that Tuesday in June that completely shattered my life. I was on a job site remodeling a luxury bathroom in the ritziest part of town. It was the kind of project where the client wants to see the boss regularly. So I went to check on the progress and smooth over some concerns about some imported tile we were installing. My phone kept buzzing in my pocket, but I was in professional mode. Mrs. Peterson was already annoyed about a delay in the delivery. The last thing I needed was for her to see me checking my phone while she explained exactly how she wanted the shower niche positioned. Client relations are everything in my business. When I finally stepped outside to take the call, I saw 6 missed calls from Mom. Not texts, calls. Mom never calls during the day unless something serious is going on. She knows I'm working. I called her back immediately, my heart already racing. She answered on the first ring. Jake. Her voice was thick, like she'd been crying for hours. You need to come home right now. It's about your father and Amber. An icy chill settled in my stomach. Mom, what's wrong? Are they okay? Was there an accident? I was already walking toward my truck, signaling to my foreman, Miguel, to take over. No, nothing's okay, she sobbed. Please, just come to the house. She hung up. The drive to my parents' house normally takes about 25 minutes. I made it in 15, running yellow lights, and probably breaking every speed limit. My mind raced through worst-case scenarios. They'd had a fight, my dad, and Amber. Someone was hurt. Why would they even be together in the first place? Amber was supposed to be on a wedding planning retreat with her bridesmaids that week, at some spa 2 hours away, where they'd finalize the last details while getting massages and doing yoga or whatever. She'd been planning it for months, said it was a modern alternative to a traditional bachelorette party. When I pulled up to my parents' house, I saw Amber's white Prius parked behind my dad's Silverado. My confusion deepened. Had she come back early? Why was she at my parents' house instead of our apartment? The front door was unlocked. I walked in and found my mom sitting at the kitchen table, still in her nurse's scrubs from work. Her eyes were red and puffy, makeup smeared down her face. When she saw me, she broke down crying again, covering her face with her hands. I rushed over to her, kneeling beside her chair. Mom, please, you're scaring me. What happened? She took a shaky breath. I got home early from my shift, migraine. Was going to lie down for a bit before my night shift. She paused, her hands trembling as she reached for a tissue. And then I heard noises upstairs. My mouth went dry. What are you saying, Mom? You thought your father was, like, looking at something inappropriate or some nonsense like that. But when I went up, she couldn't finish the sentence, fresh tears starting to stream down her cheeks. A roar started in my ears, like I was standing too close to a jackhammer. Where are they now? My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. They're still upstairs. They don't know I called you. She grabbed my hand, squeezing it tightly. Jake, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't pretend I didn't see anything. It felt like I'd been punched in the gut, knocking the air out of me. But beneath the shock, a burning rage was starting to build. How long has this been going on? I managed to ask. Mom shook her head. I don't know for sure, but I saw the texts on your father's phone. I checked while he was in the shower, trying to understand Jake. It's been months. They've been meeting here, while I was at work and you were on your job sites. Every word was like a knife twisting in my chest. All those nights Amber said she was working late on a big marketing campaign. All those girls' nights that stretched suspiciously long. All those times Dad canceled our fishing trips because of sudden back pain or reunions with his old army buddies. I stood up slowly, clenching and unclenching my fists at my sides. Stay here, I told Mom, a deadly calm in my voice. She grabbed my arm, her eyes filled with panic. Jake, please, don't do anything stupid. I can't handle any more right now. I gently removed her hand. I just need to see it for myself. I needed to know it was real. The truth was, a part of me still hoped it was some absurd misunderstanding, that Mom had seen something innocent and jumped to the wrong conclusion, that there was some explanation that wouldn't completely obliterate the foundation of my life. But deep down, I already knew. The pieces were clicking into place with sickening clarity. I didn't knock. I just pushed the door open and stood in the doorway of my parents' bedroom, taking in the scene. They were dressed, thankfully, but it was obvious what had been going on. The sheets were rumpled, clothes strewn on the floor. Amber was sitting on the edge of the bed, running her fingers through her tousled hair. Dad was buttoning his shirt with shaky hands, his back to the door. When they realized someone had entered, they both whirled around sharply. Amber's expression went from annoyance to horror in an instant. Dad froze, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. For a second, no one moved. It was like time had stopped. A perfect moment of clarity where I saw exactly who these people were. And then, something strange happened. I laughed. Not a happy laugh, but a dry, choked sound, like you'd make if someone punched you in the stomach. "Don't mind me," I said, my voice eerily steady. "Looks like you two have a good thing going here." "Son, can I explain?" Dad finally found his voice. "Don't call me that." I cut him off coldly. "You don't get to call me that. Not anymore." Amber was already in damage control mode, tears streaming down her face. She took a step toward me, hands outstretched. "Jake, honey, this isn't what it looks like. I swear it really." I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Because it looks exactly like my fiancée is sleeping with my father in my parents' bed." I nodded toward her ears. "While wearing the diamond earrings I bought you for Christmas." Her hand flew to her ear instinctively, and her expression shifted from fake contrition to pure panic. "How long has this been going on?" I demanded. They exchanged a quick glance, which only fueled my rage further. "How long?" I roared, slamming my fist against the doorframe hard enough to knock a picture off the wall, where it shattered on the floor. Amber flinched. 3 months, she whispered. "But, Jake, it didn't mean anything. It was just physical. I've been so stressed with the wedding, and—" "Save it," I interrupted, unable to stomach her excuses. "Get dressed and get out. Both of you." Dad straightened up, regaining some of his usual authority. "This is my house, son. You can't tell me to leave my own house." "Ask Mom if it's still your house," I replied coldly. "She's downstairs, by the way. She's the one who caught you. She's the one who called me." The color drained from his face as the implications sunk in. I turned to Amber. "You have 5 minutes to gather your things and leave. Anything you leave behind, I'm throwing in the trash where it belongs." She started crying even harder, her shoulders shaking dramatically. "But where am I supposed to go? All my stuff is at our apartment. You should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with my father." I turned to leave, but stopped, remembering something important. "Oh, and the ring stays. It's a family heirloom from my grandmother. And you, clearly, were never family." Her crying stopped abruptly, replaced by indignation. "You can't do this," she shrieked, her eyes suddenly dry. "I've invested so much in this relationship. I've put up with your childish friends, your obsession with those stupid sports games, your disgusting protein shake blender at 5 a.m. I deserve better." I stared at her, dumbfounded by her audacity. The woman who had just been caught cheating on me with my own father was now listing my supposed failings as a partner. It was almost impressive in its level of delusion. "You deserve exactly what you're getting," I said quietly. "Nothing." Dad tried to approach me, adopting the same posture he'd used to intimidate me throughout my childhood. "Jacob, we need to talk about this, like men." That's when something inside me snapped. In 2 strides, I crossed the room and grabbed him by the throat, shoving him back against the wall, my forearm pressing against his windpipe. Up close, I could see every line in his face, the fear in his eyes as he realized I was no longer the skinny teenager he used to push around. "Like men," I growled, in a voice I barely recognized as my own. "Men don't sleep with their sons' fiancés. You spent your life preaching about honor and responsibility and family, but you're nothing but a hypocrite and a coward." I released him and stepped back, my hands shaking with adrenaline. He slumped against the wall, gasping for air. "You disgust me. Both of you," I said flatly. 5 minutes. Then I'm coming back up, and you don't want that." I walked out and slammed the door behind me. I went downstairs to where Mom was. She was still sitting at the kitchen table, looking small and lost. When she saw me, she stood up uncertainly. They're leaving?" I simply nodded. "We deserve better than them." Mom leaned into me, and I felt her tears soaking through my shirt. "What do we do now?" she whispered. "We rebuild," I answered, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. Without them, the next few weeks were a blur of grief, rage, and practicalities. Mom couldn't bear to stay in the house, so she moved into my apartment while I crashed on the couch. She filed for divorce the next day, hiring Marion Delaney, the most aggressive attorney in town, and coincidentally, the woman whose kitchen remodel I'd done last year. Small-town living has its perks sometimes. Dad tried calling constantly, leaving voicemails that swung between anger, self-pity, and empty apologies. After 3 days, I changed our numbers and sent my crew over to the house to retrieve Mom's essential belongings when we knew Dad would be at work. Amber, on the other hand, was her own special kind of nightmare. She showed up at our apartment multiple times, cycling through different tactics. First came the tearful apologies, where she claimed Dad had manipulated her, that he'd abused his position of authority over her. She was always the victim in her own story. When that didn't work, she switched to anger, accusing me of being emotionally unavailable throughout our relationship. According to her revised version of events, I'd driven her to seek validation elsewhere because I was obsessed with work and never listened to her needs. The final straw was when she showed up one Tuesday night at 11 p.m., screaming in the hallway that I was emotionally abusive and that I had sacrificed her career ambitions for mine. Our neighbors got quite a show that night. I calmly opened the door, placed a box of her remaining belongings in the hallway, including printouts of the explicit messages between her and my father that Mom had forwarded to me, and handed out copies to the neighbors who had gathered to watch the drama unfold. "This is who she really is," I told them before shutting the door in her horrified face. Mrs. Patel from 4B, a sweet Indian grandmother who always brought us homemade cookies, picked up one of the pages, adjusted her reading glasses, and let out a loud gasp. "Shameless," she declared loud enough for everyone to hear. That was the last time Amber dared to show her face at our building. Meanwhile, I was systematically dismantling what would have been our life together. I canceled all the wedding arrangements, lost some deposits, but it was worth every penny not to marry that viper. The sense of relief at not going through with the wedding far outweighed the financial hit. The house was more complicated. We'd both signed the mortgage, even though I'd put down the bulk of the down payment. After consulting with a lawyer, I bought out her considerably smaller share and put the house on the market immediately. I couldn't imagine living there now. Every room would remind me of the future we'd planned. The hardest part was telling our friends. Some actually took her side, if you can believe it. Lisa, a mutual friend from early on, had the nerve to suggest that I must have done something to drive Amber away. Those people were immediately cut out of my life. The Real friends rallied around me, helped Mom move out of the house when Dad wasn't around, brought us food when neither of us had the energy to cook, just were there when I needed to vent, cry, or sit in silence. Mark, my best friend since high school, was especially steadfast. "I never thought she was good enough for you anyway," he admitted one night while we were sitting on my balcony. "It always seemed like she was with you despite your work, not because of who you are." Those words hit home. I'd been so blinded by Amber's looks and status that I hadn't noticed her subtle disdain for my work. Looking back, there were signs. The way she introduced me as Jake has his own business instead of Jake the contractor, as if she was embarrassed by what I actually did. How she'd steer conversations away from my projects at social gatherings. The little comments about how I could move into management and leave the physical labor behind once we were married. 3 months after Discovery Day, as Mom and I had darkly dubbed it, I started to feel like I could breathe again. Business was better than ever. Nothing like righteous anger to fuel your work ethic. I sold the would-be marital home and bought a small cabin by the lake, something just for me, with no attached memories. Mom found a small apartment near the hospital and seemed to be healing in her own way. She joined a support group for women going through divorce and started taking art classes on her days off, something Dad had always discouraged as a waste of time and money. And then, karma finally came to collect. It started with a call from a number I didn't recognize. After weeks of avoiding unknown numbers, I almost didn't answer, but some sixth sense told me to pick up. "Jake, please, don't hang up." It was my dad. My finger hovered over the end call button. "Give me one good reason," I said, my voice hard. "I'm losing everything," he replied, his voice cracking in a way I'd never heard before. "The divorce, the house, my job. I need help." I let out a harsh laugh. "And how is that my problem?" "Your mother. Her lawyer is going after everything. The house, the savings, even my pension. And someone at work found out about what happened. I've been suspended while they investigate for ethical reasons." Dad was a VP at a conservative insurance company, where executives sleeping with their sons' fiancés apparently wasn't a good look. Who would have thought? "Maybe you should call Amber to help you out," I suggested coldly. There was a silence. She's not talking to me anymore." "Let me guess. She found someone else who can give her what she needs." His silence confirmed it. "Jake, I know I have no right to ask this, but could you talk to your mother? Ask her to be more lenient with the settlement. I'm going to be left with nothing." You're right about one thing. You have no right to ask me for anything. You made your choices. Now live with the consequences. I hung up and blocked the number. 2 days later, Mom called me on her lunch break. You won't believe who came to see me at the hospital. Who? I asked, distracted as I signed for a supply delivery. Amber. I almost dropped the phone. What? Why? What does she want? She's a mess, Jake. Lost her job. Can't pay her rent, apparently. Your father promised her he'd leave me and support her, but now he can't even support himself. I let out a sarcastic laugh. And what? She thought you'd help her out? She tried to get you to convince me to help them both out. The audacity was almost impressive. And what did you tell her? Mom's voice turned hard, something I rarely heard from her. I told her I raised a smart son who doesn't waste his time on trash. I smiled for the first time in months. That's my mom. But the universe wasn't done with its twisted sense of humor yet. The next day, I arrived at a job site to find Amber waiting for me by my truck. She'd lost weight, her designer clothes replaced by worn jeans and a faded t-shirt. When she saw me, she straightened up, trying to regain that mask of confidence she always wore. 5 minutes, she said as I approached. I'm just asking for 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I nodded. Clock's ticking. I made a terrible mistake, she began, those fake tears welling up in her eyes. Your father told me things about you. He made me believe you were hiding things from me. Save it, I interrupted. You weren't manipulated. You're just facing consequences for the first time in your life. Her expression hardened. Fine, you want the truth? I was bored. You were always working, always talking about building a future and never living in the present. Robert made me feel desired. The casual use of my father's name was like a slap in the face. How many times had they laughed about me behind my back? And how's that working out for you now? I asked, leaning against my truck. I'm about to be evicted, she admitted. No one will hire me when they check my references. Your father's completely broke since your mother's leaving him in the dust. We made a mistake, she continued. But do we really deserve to have our lives completely ruined? I pretended to think about it for a moment. Yes, you do. Jake, please. She took a step closer, putting her hand on my arm like she used to when she wanted something. We can fix this. I still care about you. We had plans, a future. I looked down at her hand until she removed it. The future where you were sleeping with my father behind my back. That future. I'm not asking you to take me back, she said quickly. Just to help me get back on my feet. Even just a loan. Or use your connections to help me get a job. You're doing so well, and you're suffering the consequences of your own actions. I finished for her. What happened to all that female empowerment? Aren't you strong and independent enough to solve your own problems? Her eyes flashed with anger. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me fall while you thrive. I glanced at my watch. Your 5 minutes are up. Don't contact me or my mother again. As I turned to leave, she yelled after me. You'll regret this, Jake. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. I stopped and looked back over my shoulder. Be sure to include the part where you slept with my father. I'm sure that will really get people on your side. Her threat stuck with me. I knew Amber, and when she felt cornered, she got vindictive. I'd built a reputation in this town, and my business depended on it. I needed to protect myself. That night, I called Mark, my closest confidant, and the only person who knew every detail of what had happened. I need to send a message, I told him after explaining Amber's visit. Something that makes it clear they can't mess with me anymore. Mark was silent for a moment. What are you thinking? Something that makes them understand what it feels like to be completely exposed. The plan came together over the next few days. Mark's sister, Jen, worked at the country club where my dad still clung to his membership. It was one of the few things Mom's lawyer hadn't been able to touch, since it was solely in his name. It was his last connection to his old life, the place where he networked and pretended everything was still fine. Jen confirmed what I suspected. Dad had been bringing Amber to the club, introducing her as his personal assistant to his business contacts, trying to help her find work. The hypocrisy was astounding. He was still playing the devoted family man, telling everyone at the club that Mom and I were just going through a rough patch, and that things would be back to normal soon. The country club was holding its annual charity gala that weekend, the biggest social event of the year in our small town. Everyone who was anyone would be there, including my father's colleagues and potential business contacts, both for him and Amber. Jen confirmed they were on the guest list. My father had donated generously to the cause in previous years, so despite the rumors that were already circulating, the club hadn't revoked his invitation. Perfect. I made some calls to people who owed me favors: contractors, business partners, satisfied clients, people with influence in town. The plan wasn't just about humiliation. It was about making sure their lies didn't take root. The night of the gala, I put on my best suit, the same one I'd bought for the rehearsal dinner, ironically, and arrived with my mother on my arm. She looked incredible, in a new dress that fit her perfectly, instead of the frumpy outfits Dad always insisted she wear because they were appropriate for her age. The looks on people's faces when we walked in were priceless. Dad nearly choked on his sparkling water. Amber, standing beside him in a borrowed dress that was a little too big, went white as a sheet. Clearly, they weren't expecting us. "What are you doing here?" my father hissed when we walked directly up to them. I smiled pleasantly. "Supporting the charity, of course. Mom's the guest of honor, didn't you know?" His eyes flicked to her in confusion. "The hospital nominated me for the Community Service Award," Mom explained sweetly, "for my work with victims of domestic abuse." It was true. Mom had been coordinating a program at the hospital for years, something Dad had always dismissed as her little project. The nomination had come months ago, but the timing couldn't have been better. Amber shifted uncomfortably. "We should go, Robert, before you what?" I said, raising my voice slightly so that people nearby could hear. I wanted to thank you both properly. They froze, trapped between me and the small crowd of onlookers who were now watching us. "Thank us," Dad repeated, a warning in his eyes. "Of course." I clinked my water glass against his. "If you two hadn't shown me your true colors, I might have wasted years of my life on people who didn't deserve it." People were definitely listening now. Conversations died down as everyone strained to hear. "Jake, please," Amber whispered, her eyes darting nervously from side to side. I ignored her. "I've doubled my business, bought a lake house, and discovered who my real friends are." I raised my glass higher. "To Karma." Several people around me, who were in on the plan, enthusiastically echoed, "To Karma." Dad grabbed my arm tightly. "Enough. You've made your point." I stared pointedly at his hand until he removed it. "No, not really. You see, I brought something for everyone here tonight." I nodded toward Mark, who was working the event as a favor to his sister. The lights dimmed slightly, and the projector screen descended from the ceiling at the front of the ballroom. "What is this?" Amber asked, panic creeping into her voice. "Just a little slideshow I put together. Don't worry, it's completely PG-13. The screen lit up with images, screenshots of their text messages, with the most explicit parts blurred out, hotel receipts with timestamps that matched Amber's girls' nights and Dad's business meetings, security camera footage showing them entering hotels together. Nothing explicit, I wasn't that cruel, but enough to tell the story. Each image appeared with a simple caption explaining what it showed. May 7th. While I was building our house, these two were building a different kind of relationship. June 2nd. Dad's back pain apparently only bothered him when I invited him fishing. February 14th. Amber told me she was working. She was actually working with my father. The room was deathly silent, punctuated only by gasps and whispers. I glanced around and saw Marion Delaney, Mom's divorce lawyer, discreetly filming everything with her phone, a satisfied smirk on her face. The final slide simply read, "Character is what you do when no one is watching." When the lights came back up, Amber was sobbing, and Dad looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. The club president walked over, his expression grim. "Robert, I think it would be best if you left now. The board will be reviewing your membership." Dad looked at me with pure hatred. "You've destroyed me." I took a step closer, lowering my voice, but making sure he heard me clearly. "No, you destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone knew about it." As security escorted them out, I heard Amber sobbing, trying to convince anyone who would listen that it was all a misunderstanding and that she was being unfairly persecuted. No one was buying it. "Mom," she squeezed my hand. It was too much. I watched them go, their shoulders slumped in defeat. I didn't respond. Finally, it was exactly enough. It's been a year since that night at the country club, and sometimes I still can't believe how much everything has changed. My construction business has expanded to 3 neighboring counties. I've hired 4 new crews, and even brought mom on board to handle the administrative side. Turns out, she has a great head for business, now that she's away from dad's constant criticism. I should have done this years ago, mom told me recently, as she implemented a new scheduling system that increased our efficiency by 30%. I just never thought I could. That's the thing about toxic relationships. They convince you that you're less than you really are. Mom and I had spent years believing dad's narrative about us, that I was this screw-up son who would never amount to anything, that she was just a nurse with silly projects. Dad lost everything: his job, his reputation, his friends. Last I heard, he's living in a studio apartment 3 towns over and working at a hardware store. Every so often, a client will walk into my office and start with, "You won't believe who was mixing paint at Johnson's Hardware." I usually cut them off before they continue. I don't need the updates, and I no longer take any pleasure in his misfortune. It's just a fact of life now, like rain or taxes. Amber tried to reinvent herself on Instagram as some kind of personal growth coach after no one in town would hire her. Her bio read, "Rising from life's challenges, stronger than ever." Kind of ironic, coming from someone who created her own problems by sleeping with her fiancé's father. From what I heard, her influencer career didn't take off, and she ended up moving back home with her parents in Ohio. They both still try to contact me occasionally. Dad sends long, self-pitying emails about how he's changed and found God. Amber's messages fluctuate between sweetness and threats, depending on how desperate she is that day. Last month, she texted me saying she was ready to forgive me for exposing them at the gala. I had to laugh at that one. I don't respond to either of them. What would be the point? Mom is thriving in ways I never imagined. She quit nursing after 25 years and now runs the business side of my company. She's dating a nice guy who treats her well, a widower who owns the local nursery. She smiles more than I ever remember her smiling. She takes pottery classes on Tuesdays and recently started a small business selling her pieces online. "I don't need a grand romance," she told me when I asked if things were getting serious with the nursery guy, as I call him. "I need respect and kindness. Carl gives me that. As for me, I'm in no rush to be in another relationship. I've been on a few dates, nothing serious. There's this landscape architect I've been working with on a few projects who always finds excuses to stop by my office. She's smart, down to earth, and, weirdest of all, actually thinks my work is interesting. We'll see what happens." 2 months ago, I had an unexpected visitor at the cabin. Somehow, Dad found out where I lived and showed up unannounced one Sunday morning. I was on the deck having coffee and reading when I heard a car pull up. He looked terrible, thin, grayer, clothes hanging off him. For a split second, I felt a pang of pity. Then I remembered everything. "You have 5 minutes," I said, not inviting him up onto the deck. "Jake, please." His voice was hoarse. "I've lost everything. My job, my reputation, my savings. I'm living in a studio apartment and working retail at my age. I can't even afford health insurance." I crossed my arms, waiting. "I need help," he admitted, his eyes on the ground. "Just a loan to get back on my feet. I could work for you even. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but you're right about one thing," I interrupted. "You don't." I saw the desperation in his eyes as he looked up. "I'm your father." "No," I said calmly. "You lost that right when you decided to sleep with the woman I was going to marry. A father protects his son. He doesn't betray him in the worst possible way. It was a mistake," he pleaded. "The biggest mistake of my life. And you think that makes it better?" Dad swallowed hard, his eyes filled with what looked like genuine remorse. "I've been in therapy, trying to understand why I did it. I was jealous of you, Jake, of your success, your confidence, the fact that you'd found such a beautiful, successful woman who loved you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So your solution was to sleep with her? Destroy my happiness because you were jealous of it. It makes it even worse, I know," he whispered. "There's no excuse, but I'm begging you, help me. Just this once. I have nowhere else to turn." I studied him for a long moment. This broken man who had once seemed so powerful. The man who had made me feel small for most of my life, who belittled my accomplishments and ridiculed my choices. "You know what the worst part was?" I asked finally. "It wasn't that you slept with Amber. It was that you'd been undermining me my whole life, making me feel like I wasn't good enough. And then when, for once, I did something you approved of, finding a suitable partner, you had to take that away from me, too." He flinched at the truth of my words. I'm not giving you money, I said firmly. But I'll tell you what I will do. There's a program in town for veterans who need job training and housing assistance. I know the guy who runs it. I'll make a call and tell him you're coming. The rest is up to you. Relief washed over his face. Thank you, Jake. I don't deserve it. No, I agreed. You don't. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. Because I don't want to carry this anger anymore. But, Dad, this is it. This is the last thing I do for you. After this, we're done. He nodded slowly, accepting the terms. As he was about to leave, he paused. And your mother, is she happy? Happier than she ever was with you. I answered truthfully. He winced, but nodded again. Good. She deserves it. On that, at least, we agreed. A week after Dad's visit, I got a text from an unknown number. Of course, it was Amber. It just said, "Heard you helped Robert. What about me?" I blocked the number without replying. Some people never learn. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.